Good afternoon. Can I just give a big wow? Welcome, everyone. I see there are people standing at the back. We are going to, unfortunately, we can't live stream from this room, but we are going to be recording the meeting. So I don't know how much comfort that is to people standing outside, but thank you so much for your interest. This is very heartening for the people who've been working on organizing this today. My name is Diane Heisen. I'm the Dean of the College of Social Sciences and Interdisciplinary Studies, and I have the great pleasure of welcoming you and our panelists today to our Elected Women's Panel. This is one event for those of you who are here this morning. We planned several events to commemorate the centennial of the 19th Amendment. You'll see there are activities happening after this event today. We have another event March 25th. We have a panel April 21st that talks about some questions that were raised this morning about the less enfranchised parties in the movement. So please stay tuned. And a culminating symposium, which will be able to accommodate everyone, on September the 24th, right here at Sac State. So we've gathered a very impressive panel of women today. They've joined us from their busy schedules to talk with us. And I want to tell you that just seeing you sit here, first of all, organizing women who are on time. And even women organize, no disrespect, but women organizers, this has just come together so seamlessly. I so appreciate it. And I feel the power of just seeing you sit there. Before I introduce the panel, I'll remind you of the other events that are happening and that there will be opportunities to continue to mingle. They're on the purple flyer outside. So now I'm honored to introduce each of our panelists, and I want you to pay attention, especially students in the room, to how many times I say first and only, particularly first. So we're very excited to have our Lieutenant Governor, Eleni Kounalakis, with us here today. She is a Sacramento native and was elected Lieutenant Governor in 2018. She is the first woman to be elected to that position in the state's history. Yay. Now, I was reminded that this position dates back to 1849. And if we did our math correctly, Nathan, that's 169 years without a woman ever being elected. So it's commendable. From 2010 to 2013, Kounalakis served as President Barack Obama's ambassador to the Republic of Hungary. Kounalakis was the first Greek-American woman and also one of America's youngest to serve as a U.S. ambassador. She chronicled her time as ambassador in a subsequent memoir, Madame Ambassador. How many of you have read it? How many of you will? 3 years of diplomacy, dinner parties, and Democrat in Budapest. So that's her complete title of the book. Prior to her public service, Kounalakis was president of AKT Development, where she worked for 18 years. She built master plan communities and delivered quality housing throughout the Sacramento region. She's also served as a member of California's First Five Commission and the California Blue Ribbon Commission on Autism. She graduated from Dartmouth College and earned her MBA from UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business. And sitting beside her in the middle is Treasurer Fiona Ma. Fiona Ma, elected state treasurer in 2018, is the first woman of color and the first woman certified public accountant, CPA, to hold the state treasurer's post. As California's 34th state treasurer, she was elected with more votes than any other candidate for treasurer in the state's history. That bodes well. She has a long-standing history of public service starting back in 1990 when she was president of the Asian Business Association in San Francisco. She has almost 2 decades of service in elective office. She was elected to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors in 2002, the State Assembly in 2006, where she served for 6 years, 2 of those as Speaker Pro Tem, I understand, and the state's Board of Equalization in 2014. Prior to running for office, Treasurer Ma owned her own accounting firm and served on the San Francisco Assessment Appeals Board. Just to give you an idea of the scope of her position, and think of your own bank accounts now. So she's California is the world's 5th largest economy. I hear estimates between 5, 6, and 7, but 5 is right, Treasurer Ma? Okay. Her office processes more than $2 trillion in payments within a typical year. She is known for her transparency in providing oversights in the government's investment portfolio and accounts, as well as the state surplus funds. She oversees an investment portfolio of more than $102 billion, approximately $20 billion of which are local government funds. Very impressive. Thank you. I now have sitting to my left Sacramento Mayor Pro Tem Angelique Ashby. Sacramento Mayor Pro Tem Ashby is currently the only woman on the city council. She was elected to and think of it, there are 9, right? So you're the only woman. She was elected to the council in 2010 and re-elected in 2014 and 18. She has a bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of California at Davis and a law degree from the University of Pacific McGeorge Law. For 5 out of the 9 years, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 out of the 9 years, Councilwoman Ashby has been selected by the City Council, how'd you know I was going to say, to serve as either Vice Mayor or Mayor Pro Tem. She's a business owner in Sacramento and has received many accolades for her public service, including the Sacramento Business Journal's 2017 Women Who Mean Business Award. The Governing Institute also selected her as one of 25 national women honorees across the country. Am I allowed to say she's the only councilwoman to give birth while in office? And last but definitely not least on the end is West Sacramento Councilwoman Quirina Orozco. How'd I do? She was elected in 2016. She's also a deputy district attorney in the Sacramento County District Attorney's Office, where she handles sexual assault and child abuse cases. Councilwoman Orozco holds a bachelor's degree in social welfare and a law degree from UC Berkeley, as well as a master's degree in public policy from Harvard University. During Bill Clinton's administration, she worked for the White House for the management and budget, where she led part of the President's Hispanic Education Action Plan and other programs aimed at improving educational outcomes for underserved children. She later returned to California, where she served as an advisor to Lieutenant Governor Cruz Bustamante and as the ED, Executive Director for the Commission for One California, which promote tolerance among ethnic groups and races. I'm also told that she is a kickboxing, strength training, and cycling instructor, so do not mess with her. So, yeah. Welcome. Thank you. Finally, pulling this group together and making sure we have a productive conversation, which I highly doubt we will not, is Dr. Kim Nalder. Kim, please join me on the stage. Are you here already? Okay, there you go. Yeah. I knew I had a wing woman somewhere. So she's a full professor. I'm proud to call her a member of our college, political science faculty. She is also the director of California Speaks, the political director, which does survey research on political aptitudes and issues positions of California voters. Important work. She also directs the Project for the Informed Electorate, which is a nonpartisan voter information center devoted to informing citizens. If you ever had a chance to really understand what's going on with an issue, please attend one of her sessions. I have, and I've been educated. She's also authored a number of scholarly works and journals. I've been privileged to read some of them. And she has been cited by many, including one that she's very proud of recently, which was the BBC. We don't always get mentioned on the BBC. She teaches many courses. Among them is Women in Politics. She is the perfect moderator for this forum. I'm going to call upon you now, Kim, to do your introduction and lay the framework. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's so nice to hear great words like that from your dean and to have such an amazing panel. I should mention that this is a hot ticket, people. There are like hundreds of people outside who didn't get in, so you should feel very honored that you're here to listen to this event. Next time, I guess, we'll get a bigger room. So the prompt for this, to start us out today, President Obama recently was in a private dinner event wherein he said, "I'm absolutely confident that for 2 years, if every nation on earth was run by women," I guess we get 2 years for some reason, I don't know. But it only takes 2 years, I guess. You would see significant improvement across the board on just about everything, living standards and outcomes. He mentioned how great leaders, ask people around them what they think. They actually take in information. And he said, that great leaders ask, how can I make the people around me better? How do I empower them? How do I build a team where everyone's pulling together to get something done? And he said, not to generalize, but women seem to have a better capacity than men do to do that. So our question for the panel to start off with, and maybe we'll just go from next to me on down, is, first of all, I'd like to amend it to women of color. And was Mr. Obama, President Obama, right?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us here. It is an honor to be a part of this panel. I have had many opportunities to be on panels with the two next to me, and Quirina is a good friend. So it's really fun for me. I'm generally in a room with a bunch of men. So it's fun for me when I get to sit on a panel with not men. So thank you for that today. My name's Angelique, and I'm Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Sacramento, which you heard. And I think this is a really interesting quote. They sent it to us before the panel and asked us to be prepared to comment. And what I think is interesting is that people say this all the time, but because a former president said it, we're paying attention to it now. Do I think the world would be better off with more women in leadership? Absolutely. I think the greater diversity that you have, the more people of color, the more people who are young, the more people with different experiences, the more people who have a different life perspective, the better off we are. The more we represent the whole of the body. And I'll give you an example. Being the only, and I'm sure many of you, and men and women in this room, have been the only in the room before. The only young person, the only person of color, the only person with a kid, the only person without a kid, the only. It's always sort of an awkward spot to be in. Well, I live in that space every day. And there are a lot of things that I think would be different even for me personally. I'll give you one example. Homelessness, pretty big issue for the city of Sacramento? Raise your hand if you think that's a pretty big issue for the city of Sacramento. Okay, good. If you didn't raise your hand, I'm going to assume you're asleep. Okay. Well, for the last several years, we've been looking for solutions. We're fighting for things. One of my colleagues brought forward a resolution to do what's called a housing first model. Housing first means you take a person, no matter what circumstances they're in, drug addicted, whatever's going on with them, you put them in the housing, and then you start to put solutions around them. Great model, no problem, except for it doesn't work for women with children. And most homeless women do have children with them, but you can't put children in a housing first environment. I was concerned that the resolution prioritized then men, right? I fought for 2 years, you guys. 2 years by myself to knock that resolution down, just a simple resolution. And then recently a report came out that said the city of Sacramento is the worst in the state of California for addressing women and children. Well, big surprise, when you passed a resolution that made a model your primary target that doesn't address women and children. It wasn't intentional. Nobody did it intentionally to say, oh, we don't care about women and children. They were just trying to take a progressive model and make it work. But the unintended consequence of that was that women and children were left out of the equation. And while I fought for it, I fought alone. So I had to fight harder and longer to get something done. And the dig on me, my chief of staff who's in the room, Quirina, where are you? I lost sight of her. There she is. That is Quirina Talamantes. She's my chief of staff, but more importantly than that, she's an elected official too. And in case you in the room are thinking that, we're old and so you don't, this is beyond you, Quirina is one of the 2 youngest elected officials in Sacramento County. She is a trustee on the Sacramento County Office of Education. And you too can be an elected official in the city of Sacramento or the region of Sacramento. You just need to think about where you would plug in. But Quirina and I were talking about this on the way over here today and how women are left out of the equation unintentionally often. And in the Obama administration, one thing the women did was they said, hey, the guys keep talking over us and they keep taking credit for our work. And so even women who weren't natural alliances started standing up for each other to say, hey, she just said that. Hey, she was still talking, until pretty soon the guys took notice. I don't have a partner in crime for that. So I have to get a guy to help me. And over time I've gotten pretty good at that. But the dig on me is that I am very aggressive. Well, guess why I'm aggressive? Because I fight 8 guys every single week, right? If I wasn't aggressive, I also would not be elected. So I think women have a different set of challenges. I think it would be phenomenal for there to be more women, more sisters, more allies in arms, more people to work with. I often reach out to these women. In fact, Fiona and I have been talking in the last week about ways we could support each other. There are a lot of things that we can do to help each other out. And I hope today women of all ages in this room and men will think about how you can run for office or support women who want to run for office that will help us diversify that spectrum of leadership, not just in Sacramento, but in California and in the United States of America.
So as you're talking about being the only woman on your city council, I started out on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and we have 11 members. And when I got elected back in 2002, I was the second woman. So it was me and Sophie Maxwell, a nice African-American grandma. And we just were not prepared for fighting every day. And so I decided I wasn't going to fight. I didn't have the fortitude. Congratulations. I'm so glad to see that, that times have changed a little bit. Back then, right, they definitely diminished us, didn't take us seriously, would try to, kill our legislation, take us off of committees, anything that would give us any sort of empowerment. But I focused on the neighborhood, and I think that's where women do excel, is retail, grassroots politics, being out there, showing up at meetings, trying to listen, find solutions, and actually executing solutions for the neighborhood. Then I got elected to the state legislature. We were only about a third women at the time. I served under 3 speakers. First one was Fabian Nunez, then John Perez, who was gay, and then Karen Bass, who was the first African-American speaker. So you could see things have progressed, but we still never really broke the 1/3 threshold. Then on the State Board of Equalization, that was a whole nother animal and beast. It's a tax board. Nothing really great to say about that board. But now, as the state treasurer, it actually is a great job for me. My life has come full circle, whereas my parents did not want me to run for office or be in politics, since they were both born in China, and in China you don't run for office. You basically stay, as quiet as you can. Now in this job, I get to use all of my education and my professional experience, both outside of public service as well as private. But what I have found in politics, like Angelique, it is still very male-dominated. The lobbyists who are there, the people who help you get elected, even your consultants who you can hire are mostly men. And when I got elected to this position, my chief of staff is also a woman. She is Filipina American. And unlike the last treasurer, who's a very good friend of mine, they were 2 Asian men. Now we have 2 Asian women in the office. And as we were talking about, right, what do women do? We spent the last year really trying to build the team, right? We celebrate everybody's birthday. Every other month, we have some sort of treasurer-wide fundraiser. We recognize an employee of the month. We try to include them in our newsletter when they're doing something good. So really trying to just build rapport and camaraderie. And I think when Obama said having more women as part of government, for example, I think women do try to be a little bit more inclusive and celebratory, make people feel good for being there, for being part of the team, recognizing them. And I don't think there's quite as much ego involved, right? It's about celebrating each other. And for me, I'm just thankful that they come every day and that hopefully they're excited to come to work every day.
Thank you.
So first of all, Dr. Nalder, thank you so much for having us here. President Nelson, thank you so much. And to everyone who came out to hear 4 women talk about gender equity in politics, thank you all for being here. I think that with President Obama's comment, I I think that it was an off-the-cuff comment rather than sort of a prepared remark. And I think what he was really expressing was this feeling that so many have that if you have more women in problem solving and decision making, you get better outcomes. But I think that I like to frame it slightly differently than women are better than men or women could fix things that men can't. Because I think that really the direction that we need to move toward isn't determining whether women are better than men at this or that, because then that begs the question, well, what about the argument that maybe men are better than women, right? The way I think it should be framed is gender parity in the workplace, in government leadership, in every organization that we can think of, is having men and women working together equally with mutual respect better for everybody? And the answer to that is yes. And it isn't just a feeling that we have. It is actually pretty well documented and demonstrated now by researchers across the country and internationally. And so a couple of those places where I look for that data, and again, it's a growing body of research, but the World Economic Forum every year releases an index looking at the over 200 countries that they evaluate and looking at how the women are doing. So when I was a U.S. ambassador serving with one of my mentors, Hillary Clinton, she would always say, if you want to know how a country is doing, look at how the women are doing. The better the women are doing, the better the country is doing. Well, this is now, year after year, being quantified with actual research. So the World Economic Forum Index looks at gender parity in healthcare, gender parity in educational opportunity, gender parity in the political realm and political representation, and also as it relates to environmental equity and environmental justice. And as it turns out, there is no surprise whatsoever, there is a 1-to-1 correlation between how well the women are doing and how high the GDP of the country is. Okay, so we know this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. My cousin over there is one of your professors, Dr. Lagos, so I know she's happy that I'm using data.
Yeah, exactly.
But this goes beyond that. There's Morgan Stanley does an analysis every year in U.S. corporations. Morgan Stanley looks at the ESTH goals of a company, ESTH, economic, science, environmental science. Oh, my staff is trying to.
Oh, ESG.
ESG, excuse me. And what they have now done, with some additional research done by a professor at Berkeley, is they're looking at how well companies are reaching their ESG goals and whether or not there are women on the board of directors. And again, surprise, surprise, no surprise at all, that there is a clear correlation between these things. And so I think that's very important, because I think in almost anything you do, there should always be a why. And so if you're out there like us advocating for more women in elected office and in all the highest levels of authority across every institution, if you're advocating for that, the why should simply be that we have the facts to support that men and women working together with gender parity are better for the organization and better for the people who they serve. And so to me, I think that's really what the president was getting at. But I think that having an underpinning of the research that's going on out there is really helpful for us, because getting to gender parity, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that, is not something that can happen, frankly, without ongoing struggle and ongoing work and ongoing commitment by all of us.
Thank you so much.
There's a saying that if you want something to get done, you ask someone busy to do it. And I think we can all agree that women are the masters at multitasking, whether it be cooking dinner or raising children or running companies or running for office. we have the ability to multitask and do a lot and get a lot done. And a lot of our management style and the ability to lead includes a lot of the ability to coalition build and to find ways to work with others so that way we can get these things done. And so, you know, for me, I think it's important to recognize that in my world, women in positions of power are thinking about matters such as violence against women. With the work that I've done in the past with the DA's office, the laws. Sometimes I look at these things and I think, who was deciding this? If only there were a legislator, for example, who could take another look at this and realize that this is a hard, we have the burden of proof to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt. However, sometimes the elements just don't, they're really not in favor of the victim. Women, though, also are thinking about such issues such as, as fellow speakers spoke about gender equality, discrimination in the workplace, issues such as leave when one is on pregnancy leave and whatnot. In West Sacramento, we've had a good run. When I first started on the council in 2016, there was one woman on the council, and she had just been appointed to replace someone who vacated an office. Before then, there were all men. And so my colleague Bab Sandine took over a position, and then shortly after, in the 2016 race, I entered. Partly, it was because I felt like I had a lens that was different than everyone else. As a mother of 4 young children, all at the time were under the age of 12. I felt that that was a lens that was missing. And it was scary because, of course, without someone there to occupy the space before, you don't have much of an example. So I know with seeing Bab Sandine in that position was much more comfortable. But now I'm proud to say that in West Sacramento we have a majority women on our council. We have 3 out of 5 who are women, and it's a predominantly person of color. We have our mayor is Filipino and a gay male. My colleague Chris Ledesma is Mexican male. I'm Filipino and Mexican. Martha Guerrero is Latina, and Bab Sandine is she's the only white person on the council, and she's female. And so we all occupy different, we all possess different lenses. But when I look at the city and I think about the strength of our perspective when we're making policy, we're looking at things, and I know I can speak for myself as a mom, for example, when I go out and just change rec center policies. I mean, this is a local level decision, right? But there are things that we see because of the boots on the ground position that we have to offer a different perspective. So I think there are challenges, the lack of, and I think it's changing. And we could see in Congress from even 2016 to 2018, we almost doubled the number of women in Congress. And seeing it in my own city, I'm really optimistic about the possibilities. And I think that's because we are seeing one another. The fact that I get to sit on this panel with such impressive trailblazers is incredible. But with more of us stepping up to the plate and taking what we know best, which is ultimately, being leaders in every industry that we're in, regardless of what that means. Whether you're trying to be the best, role model to your children, or the best employee. Women have a unique set of skills that we can use to lead. And so, with that, I want to also thank Sac State and for the opportunity to sit amongst these amazing women who have these amazing perspectives.
Thank you so much. Okay, jumping off of the Lieutenant Governor's nice start with the receipts on research, there's also research that shows that when women lead ethnically diverse countries, those countries have faster growing economies than those led by men. There's research showing that companies with female CEOs outperform companies run by male CEOs. And there's also research evidence showing that when people work in groups together, the more women in that group, the better the group is, largely because of the women's emotional intelligence, essentially, their ability to listen, pay attention to what others are feeling, and work towards consensus. So given the vast range of experience represented by you on the panel today, what in your experience with increasing gender parity in government do you think has benefited the public the most? Some of you are saying that you haven't seen as much gender parity as you'd like to see. Maybe that's part of it, but.
Well, I'm happy to take a swing at it first. First of all, I think we all sort of have our research favorites. Mine is McKinsey Global. I have brought them to Sacramento twice to speak to folks about gender parity. They do an amazing report, and they work with Lean In, who I know is one of your friends, Eleni, at Sheryl Sandberg's group. And they look at women in the workplace and the C-suite across the whole world. About 4 years ago, I convinced them to include government, and Sacramento, the city of Sacramento, became the first government that they included in their annual research study. And in that study, they do look at where parity is happening and where parity is not. And the big revelation from this year's study was a look at where is it that women fall off? Why are they the first? Why am I the only? What is happening? Why in the private sector do women not make it to the C-suite? And I think we all sort of have ideas. Is it when they go out on family leave to have a baby, then they come back? What is it? Is it bias? Is it implicit bias? What is happening? And what the most recent information shows you is that it is the first rung at the management level, which in government would be the local level of government. That first rung, not the entry-level positions, women get hired at higher rates than men across almost every spectrum. But when they get to the management level, the very first level of management, that's where it's broken, and the men outpace the women significantly. And then the gap just stays and grows as they move up. I'm going to tell you my own experience with this. I ran for mayor. You heard her say that I have served as vice mayor or mayor pro tem for 6 years of the time that I've been there. This is an extraordinary amount of time. Most of my colleagues have only done it once, maybe twice. Why do they keep picking me? Because I do all the work. I'm willing to be being mayor pro tem or vice mayor means you show up when everybody else is busy. So will you go to all the extra meetings? Will you give the speeches? When the mayor's out of town, can you do this? Can you run the meeting? Can you sign the paperwork? Can you be the one who does the extra research and brings back the information? I'm more than willing to do all of that, as most hardworking women are, because I learned early in my life, probably in law school somewhere, that if you're the one that writes the document, then you're the one responsible for the details. And some people in this room, including Paula back there from the League of Women Voters, have worked on these things with me, on ethics, dynamics, and stuff like that in the city of Sacramento, where I always want to be the one that writes it down, because I want to be the one that puts in those touches, right, that I think are important. I ran for mayor because I felt ready, because I've been on the council long enough, because I've served in this leadership role some unprecedented, ridiculous number of times, and because it's a natural next step from a city council member. When I ran for office the first time was before redistricting, so I represented a fifth of the city, 100,000 people. And then after redistricting, when we all got right-sized, my district got smaller. And so I missed those areas that were taken away from me in redistricting, and I thought, this is a great shot, right? I'll run for mayor. I've been a great leader. I haven't done, I should be fine. And what happened to me? Some of you know this story. Darrell Steinberg, president of the state senate, decides, because he's termed out of a seat in the Senate, that he's going to run for mayor. Well, he was going to run for lieutenant governor, and he had a lieutenant governor account opened with more than $2 million in it. My guess, Eleni scared him. Just kidding, that's just a joke. Although maybe, but no. a lot of times people open accounts and they raise money to that account when they're not sure what they're going to run for next. But he had a lieutenant governor's race account opened up and he was raising money. But he was able to transfer that money and he had 30 years of experience. So I sort of drew an unlucky card, right? It's a guy who's been involved much longer than me, a lot higher name ID than me, and a lot of money to spend on the race. But what did that do to me? It made me another stat on the McKinsey chart. I couldn't break into that next rung. And so then how do I get to the rung after that and the rung after that? In Sacramento region, all of our assembly members and our senator are all men. They're all men. They're all men. All of your representatives that are elected within the city on the county board of supervisors, they're all men too. There are 2 women on that board, but they're elected outside the city. Everybody in the city, they're all men, all the way up until you get to these guys at these very high levels, or Doris Matsui at the congressional level. And that's very challenging as a woman. So to answer the question is you have to just keep trying. You have to persevere. I can't quit after one time. I didn't drop out of that race, even though I knew it was going to be very challenging for me, because I felt that at least if Sacramento paid attention, they would know how much I love them, and that when there was another opening, they might consider me and say, hey, remember she ran last time, but Daryl was running? Maybe we'll give her a chance this time. Maybe they would see me for my heart for this region and for how much I want to serve. And I think for all of us and for all of the women that I've had the opportunity to work with over the last 10 years, they're always leading with their heart. Great minds, great thinkers, very inspirational. Quirina down there is just absolutely, her educational background and her professional background are amazing. And she's serving on a little part-time city of West Sac board. Do you know how awesome that is for West Sacramento to have her and her talent? Just have to be encouragers. You have to be encouragers so that the Quirinas of the world move to the assembly too.
Yeah.
Treasurer?
So I would say politics is a second career for me. I am an accountant by training, a CPA. I have my master's in taxation and MBA. My CPA license since 1992. So I started late in life, but I kind of knew that I wanted to help people be able to level the playing field. And one of my first bosses was John Burton. And I wanted to work full-time for him, but my parents said, please don't do that. Don't waste, all of your education. And so I worked for him for 2.5 years as his district representative. And having a mentor like John Burton in a world that is dominated by men is very important. And John Burton was a great mentor because he loved women. Staffers, most of his staff were women. We would call ourselves the Burton Babes. He treated us fairly. He promoted us. I mean, he only had one daughter, so I think that also helped in the way he treated us. But it hasn't always been easy. I always say it's like Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire. Ginger Rogers does the same thing Fred Astaire does, but backwards and in high heels. That's exactly how it is for women in politics. We have to work twice as hard. There are double standards in anything, in everything we do and say. And I would say for me, I never felt like I could go to the top, right? So I started at the local level and then went to the next level and then went to the next level and the next level. And it wasn't really until I became Speaker Pro Tem in the legislature. When you walked into the assembly, I would be up there and I'd have the gavel and running the floor, that I started to understand what it means to have power, okay? And after that, my next position, I was like, I'm gonna be chair. Like, it's not acceptable just to be a member anymore, right? And then that, I think also, Angelique, as you were saying, that if you don't see yourself in those positions, if you're not given those opportunities, then you will never get above that barrier. And even today, most of the people I deal with in business, the bankers and finance people, they're all men. And when I meet someone, like a billionaire, and they say, okay, I like you, I'll help you. Have you met so-and-so? We went to Harvard together. Have you met so-and-so? He's my partner in this private equity firm with me. How about this guy? Oh, he owns this basketball team, and we're partners in that basketball team. They never say, have you met this woman? She's great. She will help you, right? And for me, until we level the playing field in terms of who writes those checks, right? We are never going to have, those levels of, power. The president, for example, you know how much money they have to raise, not only for the primary, which is tomorrow, and I'm just going to take a little break here. There is a voting site here on campus. If you haven't voted, please vote. Tomorrow is the primary. If you have a mail-in ballot and you did not vote, you can come in and ask for, if you're not a Democrat, you can ask for a Democratic ballot. If you mailed in your ballot already, you cannot vote, okay, tomorrow again, even though your candidate may not be on the presidential ballot, which is a question that everybody's been asking me today, so I just wanted to get that out of the way. But, it costs candidates have to raise billions of dollars, look at that, to run for president. And we just don't have the capacity. We don't write the checks. We're just not there as a community of women. So we really depend on women grassroots, right? Social media, helping each other, raise each other up, right? And voting. 100 years since we got the right to vote, women, we need to exercise it all the time.
So when you ask the question of what do women bring to the table, the reality is the more of us there are, and if we have an attitude of helping each other, the more of us there will be. And if there's just a woman peppered here and there, it is much harder to change the ultimate equation than it is when you start to see more women elected. And you mentioned the number of women who were elected to Congress in 2018. So I definitely started running after Darryl already was mayor because he had endorsed my opponent who was in the Senate with him. And I sat down and I said, Darryl, we're such old friends. We've known each other forever. And he was like, you're right. I am going to call him up and say I'm doing a dual endorsement. Right? So male allies in this effort are also really important, whether it's John Burton or Darryl Steinberg or so many others. But really, women have to get into practice of helping one another. When we were on the campaign trail, and I had never run for office, and Fiona is someone whose public service I have supported since I think
The beginning.
Yeah, when you ran for
Supervisor.
supervisor.
Yeah.
And she was invited to all these different grassroots kind of, Democratic Party events around the state. And I had committed to go to all 58 counties. Fiona was sending me her scheduled public events so that I knew what was going on out there, so I could call the organizers if they hadn't called me and see if I could participate. That kind of partnership wasn't just really good for the soul, right? It was also technically really helpful for us and for me as a first-time candidate running statewide. That kind of cooperation is super important. But I want to give two quick stories, 2 quick points as to kind of what else women in elected office bring to the table. One is, I think, probably the most relevant to women on this campus, men and women on this campus and across the CSU and UC system, which is Connie Leyva passed a bill and Governor Newsom signed it, requiring that all public universities in California provide access to women for medicated abortion. Okay, we did that, something controversial, something, taboo topics, we were way out in front. I endorsed it very early and championed it. We got the votes, we got it passed, and it was signed into law. One thing that may not have happened. Secondly, this is kind of an older example, but it's one I think about very often. When I was serving overseas in Budapest, we had a big embassy. We had almost 400 people serving there. And we were going through a process to get a new communications director. And my deputy chief of mission came in with 3 finalists for the job. Now, these were people who were all over the world bidding for their next assignment. And I said, okay, well, tell me how you came up with this list. And he says, well, the first guy, we were surprised he even bid on Budapest. He is like the up and coming, super talented Foreign Service officer, diplomat. Everybody wants him, but he bid on Budapest. So we're definitely giving him #1 spot. I said, all right. #2, oh yeah, this is just a nice guy, did a good interview, we like him, you know, has experience. I said, okay, #3. Oh, okay, so this woman, actually, earlier in her career, she served in Hungary. And I said, she already served here, so she's spent, yeah. And I said, well, does she speak Hungarian? Oh yeah, actually, she already speaks Hungarian. And I said, well, why is she third on the list? And he said, well, you know, it wasn't a great interview, and one of the people she asked to write a letter of recommendation didn't turn one in, and that's always a sign, right? And I said, well, what was wrong with the interview? Well, actually, come to think of it, she said she had the flu.
Wow.
And I said, look, why don't you take this back or reach out to her again? You know, she already speaks Hungarian, which is like the hardest language in the world to learn. And for a communications job, that's kind of a big deal. So why don't you call her and see if she's feeling better and do another interview? And by the way, Mike DCM was not anyone you would think of as a sexist guy. He's a really good guy. But he comes back in a couple days later and he says, you know, I called her. She was great. And you know, she already speaks Hungarian. So we hired her and she was great. And so what I also do think is that when you have women in positions of power, and when women are aware of the bias that exists, and we commit ourselves personally and together to root out unconscious bias and do something about it and act on it, when we are already in office, we possess the tools to make a difference.
I want to address my comments to some of the students in the room, especially the female students here. Can you hear me? Okay. Many of us count ourselves out of even considering running for office because we underestimate our qualifications. I don't care what, I'll tell you, I just heard my introduction, I'm like, who was that? I still second guess myself all the time. It doesn't matter how many accolades, how many college degrees from the best universities, you know, I can collect. It's just a matter of remembering that I belong at the table. And acknowledging that we have a purpose and a need to go out there and represent for those people who are voiceless. I didn't consider running for council. I was, people approached me because I was a soccer mom and on the side, right? I have the kids and they said, had you ever considered it? And I said, no, I'm really happy where I am. It took me 10 years to get on the Special Assault Child Abuse Unit and I loved the work I was doing. I didn't want to give that up. But then I realized, what kind of role model am I going to be for my daughters? I want them to see me fail. I want them to see me stammer. I want them to see me get the door shut in my face, and I want to recover from that with grace. I want them to see me get attacked and see me handle it. I want them to know that I stood in the face of fear and I kept walking forward. And because of that, they are now open to other opportunities. More, their world just expanded as far as the world of opportunities they can now consider because they just saw somebody do it. And now for the kids in West Sacramento who see my picture in our city council chambers, you know, there are kids that are looking at that picture going, she looks just like me. And that never existed before. I'm the first Filipino American to sit in on the council in West Sacramento, second Latina. And it means something to me. I just, I think it's important to acknowledge what Angelique just did a moment ago, and she bolstered me in front of you. She also, we did the Women's March a few weeks ago, and she got on stage and took the time to acknowledge one of our colleagues, Mai Vang, who's running for Sacramento City Council, because Mai Vang she could make history. She'd be the second woman on the Sacramento City Council, and we could finally have one more seat at the table. It's that kind of behavior that makes a difference. When I ran, I had a female opponent who attacked and said, how can she even run? She has 4 kids. Like, as if, when would I find the time? And I'll tell you what, I heard it, and it mattered to me, because I started to second guess. Well, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe, what if everybody looks at me and thinks my kids are neglected? What if I am neglecting my kids? Well, I'm proud to report I'm up for election again, and it's been going just fine. But as we sit here today, as I look to my right, and I see all of and listen to the words that my colleagues are saying, I tell you, this is history right here. This is an opportunity for all of us to hear the words of people who did the same thing. When no one else was there saying, go get them, they kept just one foot in front of the next. And I don't know. I mean, I love local politics. I love serving my immediate community. I love going to the baseball fields and finding out that the grass is overgrown and then calling the parks department and going, hey, are you going to come out here? I mean, that's the fun stuff. But really, regardless of where we are along the continuum, whether it be the PTA president, step forward, whether it be a school board, and just trying it out. Even if it means you don't win the first time, step forward because you get a lot of experience. And then the second run at it is a lot easier. For me, I joke with folks, but it's kind of true. I say I Forrest Gump things. I don't have a lot of time to overthink because I got a lot going on. So I'm just like, let's give it a try. And I just keep going. I was running. I do that, and sometimes I look back and I go, look at all the things that I accomplished just by putting the net out far and wide and bringing it all in. Sure, there's going to be license plates, there's going to be broken bottles and a whole bunch of other trash, but in that net, there might be an opportunity, and all of these women beside me have taken advantage of that.
And I would just add, I was here last week with the Sac State Dems, and it was the night of the debates, right? And I go, hey, I'm glad to be with you guys. It's better than watching the debates. How many of you are watching the debates? And all of them in the room were like, not anymore. But I was there when there were candidates running for all the different positions, and there was 2 women. They're phenomenal, running for communications chair. And the speech that they gave and what they brought to the table was like inspiring for me. And so, like Quirina said, there's opportunities to get involved now. Whether it's in your Democratic club, there's a lot of campaigns happening. God knows, we love volunteers. We will feed you. And then internships, right? Internships at our different offices. I have a robust internship. I have one, Marissa, who is my student intern who goes here as a second year at Sac State. So if you're looking for opportunities, just be available, show up, right? There's training groups now. Back then when I ran, we didn't have Emily's List training or Emerge or Lean In or Fund Her or all these organizations. And they're always looking for good women who want to learn and maybe want to run someday. And like Quirina said, it usually takes 7 times before a woman feels confident to run. When you say, hey, you should run, they'll be like, oh, I don't know, I have to think about it. Can I raise the money? Can I do it? Do I have time? Maybe, right? And these days, with all these training groups out there, they are preparing women, making them, think about it and building actually that network of women. I think in this this race tomorrow, there's 128 Emerge graduates that are on the ballot. 128. And some of them are running against each other. That's how far we've gotten, right? I mean, before it's just one Emerge, and I'd go and I'd say, if you're running, I will endorse you. And now there's like 2 running against each other, so I'm kind of stuck sometimes. But get involved. Lots of opportunities.
All right, this is lightning round, maybe in 30 seconds or something, but there's a lot of research that shows that women's motivation for running for office is different than a lot of men's, in that they run for office because they see an issue that in their community, they see a problem they want to solve, there's something that they want to change. What issue or what area did you make a difference in, wherein it made a difference that you were there and your gender made a difference in it? Quickly, lightning round before we go to questions.
We have, like any city, we have a homeless problem in West Sacramento. I actually went out to San Jose to check out a model that I thought would work in our city, and it's called the Downtown Streets Team. And basically, we give the city sponsors a program where our homeless can volunteer to do community beautification projects in exchange for gift cards. They also wear identifiable T-shirts and get a lot of wraparound services. Since then, when I brought this up to the council, I got kind of shut down right away. Folks were just kind of, oh, that's sweet. How cute are you? You're a junior, and and I Forrest Gumped it, and I was like, I didn't get an open door there. I'm going to go around. I'm going to keep going. And I kept at it for about a year and a half, and we finally enacted the pilot. So far, we have housed 11, I think it was the last, housed 11 homeless participants, and have employed almost 20. And it is a fantastic program, a lot of momentum going there. But again, it's the want going to get something done. Ask somebody who knows how to do it, somebody who's busy. So,
Thank you.
So I mentioned the medicated abortion issue. I think that was a very important thing that was accomplished this year. Another issue, because I'm a mom, I have 2 kids. They're in high school. All their friends are vaping. I co-sponsored my first piece of legislation, and it's the flavor ban for the state of California to get the flavors out of the vaping devices out of our stores in this state to try to help our kids. But I will tell you that it is an incredible privilege to be the first woman ever elected lieutenant governor in California, and using that as a platform to talk about the issues that are important to women and to help elevate, the straight up facts. Gender parity is better for everybody, not just for our daughters, but also for our sons.
I ran for office as a small business owner. I had my own CPA practice, and I was president of the Asian Business Association. So I really ran to help more small businesses, Asian and women minority-owned businesses, to succeed. And still to this day, that is still my passion. We talk about small business as the backbone of our economy, yet it is so hard to run a small business here in California, right? And that's because not a lot of small business owners are sitting there running for office, making those decisions at the legislative level especially. So I do a lot of free seminars still. I still do a lot to help small businesses, either through my newsletters, conferences, or just one-on-ones. But that's why I ran, and that's still my passion.
Thank you.
So things that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't there. There's a lot, but you don't really, at a local level on a council, you can champion something, which is what I'm going to tell you, things I champion, but you don't do anything alone. The smartest move you can make is make sure you always have a majority of votes to support you. You always need a second, and then a third, fourth, and fifth if you're me, right? Or else you're just talking into the wind and you have a lot of good ideas, but it doesn't really matter where they go. So things I've done. The first thing I did when I ran was that my district was in a building moratorium, which meant no one could build anything, and if your house burnt down, you couldn't rebuild it. It was a flood-based moratorium, and I fought for 6 years to get a congressional act through. I was part of a team that did that, but it definitely was the local leader. $1 billion of improvements to a levee to lift my district out of a building moratorium and get those levees improved. I also championed the ethics package, which made Sacramento have the most ethics accountabilities of any city in the state of California. Our officers wear body cameras because of me. I wrote the Police Oversight Commission, and I wrote the body camera policy. You cannot buy flavored vapes in Sacramento. I championed and led that effort as well. Actually, I helped Sac State when they came to me many years ago and wanted to be the first campus in the CSU system to be tobacco-free, and I helped them champion that ordinance as well. There are millions and millions of dollars that have gone to organizations like St. John's Women's Shelter and City of Refuge that I've single-handedly championed in a big way. There's a $46 million pool being built in my district that is a community center and the city's only Olympic-sized swimming pool that I championed. There are many budget items. There's a firehouse in my district that wouldn't be there if I hadn't run. There's a regional park that wouldn't be there if I hadn't run. And probably most importantly for today's topic, a couple of things that I can think of. One is in 2015, I got tired of talking about women's issues and wanted to do something, and I issued the first city report card for the city of Sacramento on how women were doing, and I followed it up every year, and it is now an official annual audit of the city of Sacramento, and we've made gains and increases across every single marginalized department in the city of Sacramento since beginning that analysis, and hiring a manager to oversee the bias and do bias oversight for all hiring and all promotions in the city of Sacramento to knock down those issues. Brought on a child care manager for the city of Sacramento to make sure that child care is an elevated topic at all times. And then lastly, the first time I went to the Women's March, I was irritated because I was the only woman on the stage. I stood on the stage with about 20 elected men. And I wasn't actually the designated speaker, but quickly I was, because the guys were like, oh no, we're not going up there without her, and you never saw the group of men push me to the front faster. After that, I got very involved with the Women's March, and now I make sure that it is a group of women standing at the front of that stage every single year, and that people in this city and in this region that come to that, all 20,000 of them, see the faces of all different kinds of women who are leading and fighting and pushing in this city. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and this year at the speech I reminded people that she's the alpha generation, right? That's the new little generation. Here's something sort of heartwarming. The alphas have never known a presidential race that didn't have a viable woman in it. And the leading author in my daughter's lifetime is Michelle Obama. And the only Speaker of the House in her lifetime is a woman, Nancy Pelosi. And she's surrounded by strong women. And she sees elected women every day. And so that little alpha generation of women are going to have a very different perspective and lens for women than us. And it gives me great heart to know that and to champion that and to shine the brightest light I possibly can from whatever seat I'm sitting in on all of those issues.
Thank you so much. Okay, we have a few minutes for questions. If you have a question, raise your hand and someone will get a microphone to you. We need to have the questions on the mic because we're recording for online posting. So here we go.
Thank you. I don't think it's on. Is it on?
Is it on the bottom maybe? We can get the one on the other side if that one doesn't work.
There we go. No, it's.
Oh, can we get the other mic over there?
I will just shout.
Okay, I'll repeat what you say. Is that one working?
Hello? I think so. Does it sound like it's working?
Okay, let's move that over there then. Can you?
Going over here?
No, bring it. Yeah. We need it on mic because it's recorded. Thank you.
Thank you. Presidential candidate Mike Bloomberg, I hear a lot of theme here about change. He is a verifiable misogynist and denigrator of women. He says he has reformed and that he's sorry. Shall we believe him?
I'll take this one for the sake of
You
helping out
believe
some
him.
other members of the panel. Look, we've never had a bigger misogynist than we have in the White House now. So if we're doing comparative analysis, I think there's a big shadow cast there. I personally cast my ballot. I went to Nashville this week with my family. I was afraid, what if I get delayed by a day? I need to cast my ballot early. I don't want to miss out. And I personally marked the box of Elizabeth Warren. And I did so because she's a fighter and she has a plan. However, I will tell you that any day that we can remove Donald Trump with anyone with blue next to their name would be a good day. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there a student with a question?
Hi, my name is Maria Solorio, and I personally have been wanting to run for governor of California since I was in 3rd grade. So,
Do it.
what would be the best piece of advice you can give me?
You want to run for governor? I think the lieutenant governor is probably the best one to answer this question.
You know, the fact that at your age, you are conceiving and can see yourself as governor of California is really a demonstration of how far that we've gone. I mean, my generation we didn't have models to be able to get us there. So hopefully someone on this stage will be a model for you before you actually become governor, because we haven't had a woman governor of California yet. But in terms of the best advice, my first job in politics, I was in high school, and no matter what I was doing in school or as a business person, I always had one foot in and around my civic life, my political life, because you never know when that opportunity is really going to come to you and what shape it's going to take. But it's not, to me, it's something that many of us do, which is, you can study political science, you can get a job in government, you can run for various different offices. In my case, I worked in the private sector for a while, but all the time I was in the private sector, I was still running to be a delegate in Sacramento, my hometown. I was still volunteering and supporting other candidates. I was making sure I read the newspaper every day, that I was up on policy. So I think that the thing about democracy, right, is that it is self-government. And so whoever you are, whatever you're doing, playing a part as an active member of our democracy is incredibly important. And if you do it all along the way in your life, you really never know when those windows of opportunity for leadership are going to come your way. So that's really my advice, is that if you think, oh, no, forget it, maybe I'm going to do something else, it's better to think, I have this goal out there, and I'm going to do things, the obvious things to achieve that goal. Study political science, get a job in government, run for office. But if along the way, between your age now and one day, maybe 20 years in the future, if you think, no, I'm going to go another direction, remember that the pathway to public service is always open for you if in everything you do, whether it's your job or frankly, whether it's parenting, whether it's the kinds of things that you do with your friend groups, that whether it's staying up to date on the issues at hand, that you really never know when the opportunity may come your way. And if you're wired the way you are right now, you always want to be ready for that moment of opportunity.
Can you give her back the mic? First of all, stand up. Let's give you some practical application advice right now. There's at least 50 votes in the room. What's your name? Say it into the mic.
Maria Solorio.
All right, what year do you want to run? Have you thought about this?
I wanted to, 1, be the youngest one, and 2, be the first Latina female governor of
Both of those are going
California.
to be easily achievable in the next 10 years. So let's say 2030. Fair enough? Yeah? So why don't you tell them, my name is, and I'm running for governor of the state of California in 2030.
So my name is Maria Solorio, and I am running for governor of California in 2030.
All right.
Thank
I
you.
have to say, it is very inspiring. Like, this generation sees no fear, right? They don't think failure is a bad thing. They're not scared about failure. And you all have so much confidence. It is really amazing. Eleni and I, tomorrow's her birthday. The day after is my birthday. We're the same age.
I'm one day older than Fiona.
And we grew up with immigrant parents, right? So we did not have that same sense of confidence. It was like, hey, work hard, right? You're here, get a good education, go to school. But we never, I never had these dreams or goals at all growing up. It was just like, go to school, get a good job, buy a home, right? Have a family. So it's really, really amazing. So we will help you.
You can do it.
That's perfect. We are out of time. Okay, do you have a really quick one?
So we've talked a lot today, or it's come up several times, the Women's March. So I'm thinking of it kind of as a metaphor for women in politics. And it's obviously been a very powerful event over the past several years. But there's also the issue of women feeling marginalized who have attended the Women's March. And so I'm wondering, how do we combat the attempt to make women in politics or women's political activity into a monolith, and continue to build coalitions between women of color, LGBT groups, other political activists, to recognize that women aren't just fighting to have one voice heard. It's all women, of different backgrounds and needs.
Well, I can answer as to the Women's March, and it's probably a very similar answer to all things. The answer is to be intentional about inclusion, right? Because a lot of times people feel marginalized because they've been left out of the equation unintentionally, so we have to very intentionally include people. And so, for example, this year, we led the march with the Native Americans, and then right behind Native Americans doing a heritage routine and dance and spiritual interpretation, both at the march kickoff, through the march, and at the spot where the speech was given. Following them immediately was the Hundreds Unit, which personally, I want the Hundreds Unit just to go everywhere with me in general. It's 100 black women that just are the best dancers you've ever seen in your life. And they led the march, and then making sure that everyone was included, that we reached out to the LGBTQ community, make sure they knew they had a spot in that parade, that the young people were there, that older demographics felt included, that men feel included, that everyone that wants to be a part of that movement has an opportunity to do so. The worst thing that we can do as women is fracture ourselves and say only this group is going to be here, or there are only so many seats, or to fight each other for those positions. Men do not do that. When there are not enough seats in the room, the men go get another chair and bring it in for their buddy. And we need to start doing that too, right? There's not just one seat because I'm the only woman on the council doesn't mean there can only be one woman. It means we need to kick some guys out of their seats so you guys can come in the room too.
Well said. All right, so we have an equality tea in the Redwood Room right after this, and then there is a book talk at 4 o'clock with Professor Mona Siegel talking about her new book on women's rights after World War I. Another round of applause for our panel. Thank you.